Hey parents, I got a great question from a parent today and I wanted to answer it for everyone. The question was, how do I help my child pick an adverb that ends in ly for their paper? And B, the second question was, how do I help them add a relative clause to their paper? And a relative clause is basically a clause that begins with who or which. That's the one that we use in the Institute for Excellence in Writing. So my answer to both of those questions would be to first always consult your teacher guide. So each week, the best way to support your child is to open your teacher guide to the assignment that they're working on that week. You as a parent have some extra special things in your guide and they're in gray. So in your teacher guide, they have something called board notes. Those board notes are everything that Andrew Pudawa writes on the board during the video lesson your child is watching. So if you didn't get a chance to watch the video lesson with your child, this is a way you can kind of have a cheat sheet to see what Mr. Pudawa covered in the video. And you can actually check your students' notes from the video against your teacher guide notes to see if they capture everything. One thing you'll notice is that when, particularly at the beginning of the year, when in the video he is introducing a stylistic technique like adverbs, ly adverbs is what they call them in IEW, he will have a list of adverbs that he brainstorms with the children in the video. So that's the first place to start. But if you're not sure actually how to help them find an adverb, here's a couple of tips. Adverbs generally describe verbs, adjectives, and other adverbs. To keep it simple, just help your child find a verb in one or more of their sentences and answer the question how or when. Even though adverbs answer the questions how, when, where, why, how often, how much, to what extent, under what condition, we don't need to worry about all that. Just find an adverb and answer how. Here's an example. Mrs. Brown teaches writing and grammar. Teaches in that sentence is the verb. How does Mrs. Brown teach writing and grammar? Mrs. Brown enthusiastically teaches writing and grammar. Or you can use any ly adverb that would fit. So you find a sentence in your child's paper, find the verbs in those sentences, usually an action verb, and then ask, how was this done? Or even when, like occasionally, frequently, depends on what the verb is. Now, for the second question, the relative clause that starts with who or which, that's the one we learn in IEW. Same thing, check your teacher guide first and see if there are any examples on the board notes that Mr. Pudawa gave. Now, here's how you show them how to add a relative clause starting with who or which. We'll take the same sentence. Mrs. Brown teaches writing and grammar. Find a noun in that sentence. We'll just use Mrs. Brown again. Mrs. Brown. Think of any extra information that you know about Mrs. Brown. Mrs. Brown, who is an IEW instructor, teaches writing and grammar. So you would do the same thing. You would go to their first draft that they've written from their keyword outline, and you would help them find nouns throughout their first draft and say, can we give the reader some more information about those nouns, starting with a who or which. Now, obviously, if you are, or they're giving more information about a person or a personified animal, then they would use who. If they're giving more information about a thing, they would use which. I'll give you an example of a which. Mrs. Brown teaches writing and grammar. I'll use writing and grammar. So Mrs. Brown teaches writing and grammar, comma, which are her favorite subjects. So hopefully that answers the question for you. You know, when you're trying to support your child, just a recap, always consult your teacher guide and always have that open on the lesson that your child is working on that particular week. And then, of course, I just gave you some examples of how you help them decide how to add an adverb ending in ly and how to add a relative clause that starts with who or which. All right, thanks so much for your question. If you have a question, feel free to send me an email and I'd be more than happy to send you or make a video answer for you as well. Take care.